Let's start with DevOps. Our topic today is from Build to Run, talking about DevOps to SRE. So Henrik, why don't you lead us off with some foundational information? Why DevOps? What problems does it address?
First of all, before we move to DevOps, we have shifted quite a bit since the last 15 years. We first, everyone was talking about Agile, and now, as the last few years, was everything about DevOps. So what do you move to Agile or even to DevOps is basically you're just want to provide a meaningful and good user experience to your customers. So to be able to do that, you need to be able to get the feedback in time and adjust your applications based on your users. So that's the main core concept of DevOps. The other concepts, of course, is you're mixing dev and operation practices together. In theory, of course. And then, of course, you have all those continuous everything. So by continuous everything, there is the concept of continuous development that comes along with that, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and so on and so on. And at the end of the day, we want to deliver, be faster to deploy releases on production, to get the feedback and adjust our releases depending on our users. So we always looking at our customers to make sure that we are providing the good product in their hands. And if we are able to provide good product to the customers, maybe we are able to reduce the number of defects or issues, and which means we are spending less times working on bugs and more time providing innovation. So I think DevOps is also a way on the paper to extend and provide innovations and better user experience to our customers.
I love that. I love that, it's anchored in talking about the customer. I love that it's anchored in talking about innovation. And, those are some key themes that should really be driving any organization, no matter what sort of philosophy you take on. Niall, I want to flip it over to you. I've heard you say that DevOps is poorly defined, yet rigorously enforced. Can you expand on that? Maybe talk about some of the challenges that, bringing in this DevOps mentality that creates in organizations.
Yeah, no worries. So I think the first thing to say is no shade intended by previous remark or other related remarks. But I think it's notable that despite everything Henrik has said, which is true about trying to shorten time between doing something and actually doing the thing, particularly when it involves shipping software to customers, adding new features, etc. Despite everything that Henrik has said in that context, what we actually experience when we go out and ask people, what is this DevOps thing anyway? Like, what do you find yourself doing? The overwhelming thing that I hear from customers, folks in the industry, et cetera, is that DevOps is this philosophy, an approach to how you organize work with respect to doing software delivery. Note, I'm kind of carefully scoping that for a moment. Software delivery inside an organization. When you kind of poke and prod at that and go, like, what else is there? There are folks who can talk articulately about this. This thing called CAMS, which it's an acronym that expands to measurement, continuous delivery, lean, and so on and so forth. But overall, I think the message that I get when I talk to people about DevOps is mostly that it's a philosophy about how you should organize the act of doing software in your company, with maybe some organizational recommendations about, hey, maybe if we weren't all in kind of separate teams warring with each other all the time, that would be good. And when you talk to people who are actually doing DevOps, or their job title is DevOps, even though that's kind of like saying I'm an applied philosopher as a job title, when you talk to people who are doing DevOps, you soon find out that, like, I want to say the first two standard deviations of those people are doing CI/CD systems, like Jenkins, Circle CI, whatever. And there's good things about this, right? We're all reacting to the fact that managing systems the art of software delivery, and note I do not say science, but the art of software delivery, the art of managing systems, and so forth, all very difficult, which is why Jane Austen wrote in the late 1700s, it is a truth universally acknowledged that systems do not manage themselves. Well, she wrote the first part, not the second part. And so there are various kinds of ways, if you acknowledge that managing software processes, managing delivery to customers and so on and so forth is very difficult. There's a number of ways you can react to that. And DevOps is one reaction as a philosophy. And also the people who are doing CI/CD systems are in some sense, they're being placed against the problem of managing software inside institutions. But another way of reacting to that problem that, life is hard and excrement happens and so on is a thing that I write about, which is the thing called site reliability engineering, which originated in Google in the early 2000s. So some folks say, and I'm also on record as saying that DevOps is a philosophy and SRE is an opinionated implementation of that philosophy. And I don't think that's wrong, but I think a slightly more interesting origin story in some sense is the origin story that I sometimes tell about SRE within Google, which is basically when Google's very young, there's, 50 people, 50 engineers, 100 engineers, something like that, which is still a very large number for a startup company, of course. But there's some number of engineers. They're all working on the search engine because there's nothing else to work on because it's early. Some subset of those people end up being concerned about what's happening in production. Hey, is that index, did we rebuild that since May? Oh, this thing is on fire. And they have all of these concerns about what's actually happening with the product in production. So these people are product engineers. They are software engineers. That's all that's hired at that stage. I think, I'm not 100% sure. I wasn't around in the very early days. But basically, these folks are software engineers who are software oriented, I should say, with respect to the idea that there are problems to solve, like what kind of tools will we bring to bear on these problems? And it's kind of the native instinct to bring software to bear on these problems. And so these folks, Ben Traynor-Sloss would probably say that they are the same hiring bar as all of the other software engineers or kind of similar organizational observations. But I'll just say that there's a team and some subset of them are just like all the other people on the team, except they care about production and they have software mindset with respect to going and solving those problems. And so if you drag forward the time slider and have everyone move very fast as it plays the movie really quickly, what you get at the end of that is a bunch of teams called site reliability engineers who work on the products in question, have similar skills, parity of esteem, automation-oriented mindset, so on and so forth, except they just happen to care about the things that you care about when you have to run stuff in production. And so that orientation and that, I suppose, organizational placement produces things that you don't get in the DevOps space as such. You get folks in the DevOps space who talk about metrics around software delivery and so on. But in particular, things like SLOs and SLIs are conceptual frameworks that you're using to try and manage a service better, but they're not things you'd necessarily think of in a feature development context for a product. And so there's this body of knowledge which is about how to run services better, which is where the opinionated bit of opinionated DevOps comes from. And that's really the distinction as I see it.
I love that. It kind of started us into our next topic. So let's start to go there a little bit. Ian, I want to give you a chance to jump in here. So, a couple of things that Niall touched on was one, some of that, hey, SRE, when we start thinking about it, is an implementation of DevOps. And so, maybe you could just close the loop on DevOps for us a little bit and see how you kind of make that transition with your customers and what you're hearing out in the field from DevOps. And then let's jump into SRE as well. But why don't you kind of wrap us up on that DevOps topic?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen is, and what I've experienced in the field is, like now talking about, it's a DevOps is a philosophy, it's a set of principles. It's not terribly opinionated, or prescriptive about, how you do things. Like a lot of the times, like in the SDLC, like in the feedback loop in DevOps, it's not going to necessarily help you prioritize work coming back from the end of that feedback loop. That is something that SRE it does have in the form of like SLOs, error budgets, things like that. Allows you to make those informed decisions from the signals that are coming back from that feedback loop. But yeah, I think Niall and Henrik were talking about, it's DevOps is a culture, it's a philosophy. Sometimes it gets shoehorned into a role. I've been put in that role. I've got that title. It is very hard, and it's very hard when organizations do kind of take that and try and distill it into a role and say, "This is, we're doing DevOps. We have a person here that does that," rather than adopting the philosophy at an organizational level. That's one of the critical pieces of that. I think SRE does have does help with that kind of transition, giving more prescriptive definitions and roles for the actions that need to happen.